If you can't pay, we can't treat her. That was the sentence that broke something inside me, and the sound of the heart monitor beside my daughter didn't help. It was too fast, too sharp, like every beep was counting down instead of keeping her alive. Her skin burned under my trembling hand. 103 degrees, the nurse had said, and I kept whispering it like maybe repeating the number would make it smaller, make this easier. But nothing about this night was easy. Not the smell of antiseptic, not the way the fluorescent lights made. Everything looked colder than it was. Not the way the doctor avoided my eyes as if my fear was something contagious. 12 hours earlier, I had still believed I had options. I had stood in my boss's office clutching that stupid printed request form. The paper already wrinkled from how tight I held it. And I remember thinking if I just explained it calmly, if I stayed professional, maybe he'd understand. Maybe he'd see me as more than just another employee on payroll. My little girl is sick, I said, my voice smaller than I wanted. And even now I hate how it sounded, like I was already apologizing for asking, like I already knew the answer. And he didn't even look up at first, just kept typing, the clicking of his keyboard louder than my heartbeat, until finally he leaned back and sighed like I was inconveniencing him, like my daughter's fever was interrupting something more important. "This is a company, Hannah, not a charity," he said, and the words landed harder than they should have, because they weren't shouted, they were casual, almost bored, and that made it worse. The way a room full of people suddenly felt too quiet, the way I could feel eyes on me without daring to look up, the way my hands started shaking just enough that I had to grip the paper tighter. I remember whispering it then, not to him, not to anyone really, just to the space between breaths, "She's all I have." And I don't know who heard me. I didn't even know anyone was listening, because when I walked out of that office, nothing had changed. No one stopped me. No miracle happened. Just the same gray hallway and the same weight in my chest that followed me all the way to the hospital. And now here I was, standing beside her bed. The machines louder, the room smaller, the fear heavier, and the nurse's voice cut through everything. "Ma'am, your bill," she said gently, like softness could make it affordable, and I nodded like I understood, like I had a plan. But the truth was I had nothing left to give, nothing left to trade, and that's when I whispered it again. The same words, the same quiet desperation. "My little daughter is sick." Except this time, someone answered without speaking, because a few minutes later the nurse came back, her expression different, confused, almost careful. "It's been taken care of," she said, and I froze, my mind trying to catch up, trying to understand how numbers that big just disappeared, how problems like mine don't just solve themselves. And when I turned toward the doorway, I saw him for the first time, standing there like he had always been there. Dark suit, still posture, eyes that didn't miss anything, and he didn't smile, didn't explain, just looked at me like he already knew everything I had been through, everything I had tried to hide. And when he finally spoke, his voice was low, controlled, the kind that didn't need to be loud to be heard. "Next time," he said, "you don't beg them." And something in my chest shifted, because I didn't know who he was, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Nothing about this help was simple, and nothing about him was safe. I did not thank him right away, and that was the first thing I noticed about myself, because any normal person would have, but nothing about this felt normal. Not the way the bill disappeared, not the way the nurse suddenly treated me like I belonged there, not the way this man stood in the doorway like he had always owned the room. My daughter shifted slightly on the bed, a soft sound escaping her lips, and I turned instinctively, my entire world narrowing back to her, to the rise and fall of her chest, to the number on the monitor that finally started to slow. And for a second, just 1 second, relief hit me so hard it almost made me dizzy. When I looked back, he had not moved, not even an inch, just watching, not impatient, not demanding, just present in a way that made everything else feel less real. "I do not understand," I finally said, my voice barely steady, because gratitude felt too small for whatever this was, and fear felt too big to ignore. And he stepped closer, not enough to invade my space, just enough that I could see the details now, the clean lines of his suit, the quiet confidence in the way he carried himself, the kind of presence that did not ask for attention but took it anyway. "You do not need to," he replied, and there was something in his tone that suggested this was not a conversation he expected to explain, and that unsettled me more than anything, because I had spent my whole life understanding things, calculating, planning, surviving, and now something had happened completely outside of my control. "People like me do not get help like this," I said before I could stop myself, and his eyes shifted slightly, not offended, not surprised, just aware, like he had been waiting for that exact sentence. "People like you should not have to ask," he answered. And for a moment, the room felt too quiet again, the machine softer, the air heavier, and I realized he was not just talking about the hospital bill. I glanced at my daughter, then back at him, trying to place him, to understand what kind of man steps into a stranger's life and changes everything without asking for anything in return. And that was when the question slipped out, the one I was not sure I wanted answered. "Why?" And this time, he did not respond immediately, his gaze shifting past me, toward the hallway, as if measuring something I could not see. And when he finally spoke, it was quieter, more deliberate. "Because I heard you," he said, and that should not have meant anything. But the way he said it made it feel like everything. Footsteps passed outside, distant voices, the normal sounds of a hospital continuing as if nothing had changed. But inside this room, something had, something I could not name yet, something that felt like a line I had just crossed without realizing it. "I can pay you back," I added quickly, the words automatic, the only way I knew how to balance something this heavy. And for the first time, something almost like amusement touched his expression, not mocking, not dismissive, just certain. "No," he said simply, and the certainty in that one word left no room for negotiation, no space for argument, and that scared me more than a yes would have, because a debt I could measure was something I could eventually erase. But this felt different. He took a small step back then, as if already done, as if the decision had been made long before I even knew there was one to make. And his voice softened just enough to feel personal when he added, "Focus on her." And I nodded without thinking, because he was right, because she was the only thing that mattered. But as he turned to leave, I felt it again, that pull of something unfinished, something unspoken, and I knew with a clarity that settled deep in my chest that this was not the end of anything. It was the beginning of something I was not ready for, because men like him did not appear in your life without changing it. And they definitely did not disappear without a reason. I told myself it was over the moment he walked out, that whatever invisible line had been crossed could still be ignored if I just focused on what mattered, on the steady rhythm of my daughter's breathing, on the way her small fingers curled around mine, as if nothing in the world had changed. But the truth was something had changed, because even as the room quieted and the machine softened into background noise, I could still feel his presence like it had not fully left. Like the air remembered him. The doctor came back an hour later with a different tone, more attentive, more careful, explaining treatment plans I suddenly had access to, options that had not existed before, and I nodded through it all, absorbing words without really hearing them, because my mind kept replaying that moment in the doorway, the way he had said he heard me, as if that alone had been enough to shift everything in my life. By morning, the fever had dropped, not gone completely, but enough to loosen the tight grip of fear around my chest. And when my daughter opened her eyes and whispered, "Mommy," it broke me in a way I could not show, because I had to be strong, I had to be steady, I had to be the one thing in her world that never wavered, even when everything else did. I stepped out into the hallway to call into work, because reality does not pause for miracles. And the moment I heard my boss's voice on the other end, something inside me hardened in a way it never had before, because yesterday I had begged, yesterday I had whispered, but today I knew something he did not. Today I knew that I was not as powerless as I had been. "I will not be in today," I said, keeping my voice calm, measured, and there was a pause on the line, followed by that same irritated tone, the same dismissive edge. "You do not get to decide that, Hannah," he replied, and for the first time, the words did not land the same way. They did not shrink me, did not make me apologize, because somewhere between last night and this morning, something had shifted. "I already did," I answered, and I ended the call before he could respond, my hand steady in a way it had not been in a long time. When I turned back toward the room, I noticed the nurse watching me with a small, knowing look, not intrusive, not curious, just aware, like she understood more than she was saying, and it made me wonder how many people had seen what happened last night. How many people knew that help like that did not come without a reason? I sat back down beside my daughter, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead, grounding myself in the simple, real things. But even then, even in that quiet moment, my thoughts drifted back to him. To the way he had refused repayment. To the way he had spoken like this was not a favor but a correction, like something unfair had been set right. Hours passed, slow and steady, until the door opened again, and for a split second my heart jumped in a way I could not explain, because part of me expected it to be him, expected that presence to return like it had never really left, but it was just another nurse, another routine check, another reminder that life was still moving forward whether I understood it or not. And yet, as the afternoon light shifted through the window and stretched across the floor, I realized something that settled deep in my chest, something I could not ignore no matter how much I tried to focus on normalcy. Because men like him do not solve problems halfway. They do not step into a situation and then walk away without making sure it stays solved. And the way he had looked at me, the way he had said next time, told me there would be a next time, whether I wanted it or not, whether I was ready for it or not. And for the first time since all of this began, I was not just thinking about how he helped me, I was starting to wonder what he would ask for when he decided to come back. The second night was quieter, but it was the kind of quiet that makes you listen harder, because every small sound feels like it means something. And I sat there watching the numbers on the monitor stabilize, telling myself that this was enough, that this was where the story should end, with her getting better and me going back to a life I understood. But deep down I knew it would not be that simple. The hospital discharged us just after noon the next day, and stepping outside felt unreal, like the sunlight did not belong to me yet, like I had skipped something important and the world had not caught up. And as I adjusted my daughter against my shoulder, feeling her weight lighter than it should have been, I caught myself scanning the parking lot without meaning to, as if part of me expected to see him again, that same still presence standing somewhere just out of place. But there was nothing, just cars, just people, just a normal day that felt anything but normal. The ride home was quiet, my daughter asleep in the back seat, her breathing soft and even, and I kept glancing at her through the rearview mirror, needing to see that she was really okay, needing proof that what happened had not been some kind of fragile illusion that would disappear the moment I looked away. When I unlocked the door to our apartment, everything was exactly how I left it, the same worn couch, the same chipped kitchen counter, the same stack of unpaid bills sitting where I had tried not to see them, and for a second, it grounded me, pulled me back into something familiar, something I could manage, because this was my world, this was where I knew how to survive. I laid her down gently, tucked the blanket around her, and stood there a moment longer than necessary, just watching, making sure she stayed in that peaceful sleep, and then I turned toward the kitchen, toward the reality waiting for me, because no matter what had happened, life still demanded answers, still demanded plans, still demanded that I figure out what came next. My phone buzzed on the counter, sharp and sudden in the quiet, and the name on the screen made my chest tighten, my boss. And for a moment I considered ignoring it, letting it ring until it stopped, but something in me refused to hide again, refused to go back to the version of myself that whispered and waited. So I answered, "You think you can just disappear for 2 days?" His voice came through immediately, irritation wrapped in control. The same tone that used to make me shrink, but now it only sounded smaller, like something that no longer had the power it once did. And I took a breath before responding, steady, deliberate. My daughter was in the hospital, I said, not apologizing, not explaining beyond what was necessary. And there was a pause, a shift, like he had not expected that answer to come without hesitation. "That is not my problem," he replied, and for the first time, the words did not land as cruelty. They landed as something else entirely, something predictable, something I could see through. And I almost said something back, something sharp, something honest. But before I could, there was a knock at the door, soft but unmistakable, cutting through the moment like a line drawn between before and after. I froze, my phone still in my hand, my heart picking up just enough to remind me that not everything had settled, not everything had returned to normal. And the knock came again, just once, controlled, patient, like whoever stood on the other side knew exactly how long they would be. Waiting, I ended the call without another word and moved toward the door slowly, every step measured, every thought colliding in my head. Because there are moments when you know your life is about to shift again, when you feel it before you see it. And as my hand reached for the handle, I already knew, without needing to open it, that this was not a coincidence, that this was not random, that some doors do not get knocked on twice by accident. And when I finally pulled it open, I understood exactly what kind of next time he had been talking about. The door opened slower than I intended, like my hand was buying time my mind did not have. And the moment it did, everything on the other side felt too still, too composed to belong to my world, because he stood there exactly as I remembered, same posture, same quiet control, as if time had not passed for him at all, while for me everything had changed. I did not say anything at first, because what do you say to someone who steps into your life and rewrites it without asking? What words even fit something like that? And he did not rush me, did not fill the silence, just waited with that same steady presence that made it clear he was not here by accident. "You should not leave your door unlocked this long," he said finally, his voice low, calm, like he was commenting on something simple, something ordinary. And it took me a second to realize he was not talking about safety the way most people would. He was talking about awareness, about control, about the kind of world he lived in. I was not expecting anyone. I replied, my voice more even than I felt, because something in me refused to show uncertainty. Not now, not in front of him. And his gaze shifted slightly, not judgmental, not harsh, just noting it, like he was cataloging every detail without effort. "You should start," he said, and then his eyes moved past me, into the apartment, not intrusive, not disrespectful, but observant in a way that made me suddenly aware of everything. The small space, the worn furniture, the life I had been holding together one careful decision at a time. I stepped aside before I could second guess it, not inviting, not exactly, but not stopping him either, and he walked in without hesitation, like he already understood the boundaries better than I did. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded louder than it should have, and for a moment, neither of us spoke, the quiet stretching just enough to make everything feel sharper, more defined. "She is resting," I said, nodding toward the bedroom, because that was the center of everything, the only thing that mattered. And his expression shifted just slightly, something softer passing through before it settled back into that controlled calm. "Good," he said. And it was such a simple word, but it carried weight, like her being okay had been the only outcome he would have accepted. I folded my arms without realizing it, not defensive, but grounding, holding onto something familiar as I tried to understand why he was here, because this was the part that had been waiting, the part one could not predict, the part that did not come with clear answers. "You did not come here just to check on her," I said, and there it was, the question underneath everything. The one I had been trying not to ask since the hospital, and for the first time since he arrived. Something almost like approval flickered in his eyes, like I had finally stepped into the conversation he expected. "No," he replied simply, and he reached into his jacket, slow, deliberate, not threatening, just precise, pulling out a small envelope and placing it on the kitchen counter between us. I stared at it without moving, because objects like that do not appear without meaning. And he did not push it toward me, did not explain it, just let it sit there, like the choice to acknowledge it was mine. "What is that?" I asked, even though part of me already knew it was not just paper, not just something simple. And his answer came just as steady as everything else about him. "A solution," he said, and that word settled into the room differently than anything else he had said so far. Because solutions come with direction, with consequences, with paths that do not always lead back to where you started. And as I looked at that envelope, then back at him, I realized something I had been trying to ignore since the moment he walked into my life. Because help like his does not close doors, it opens new ones. And standing there in my own kitchen, I understood that whatever was inside that envelope was not just going to change my situation, it was going to change me. I did not touch the envelope right away, because something about it felt heavier than paper, heavier than anything I had ever held before, and my eyes stayed on it like it might explain itself if I waited long enough. But it did not. It just sat there between us, quiet and certain, like him. "Open it," he said, not as an order, not as a suggestion, just a fact, like this moment had already been decided. and my fingers moved before my thoughts could catch up, sliding the edge open carefully, almost cautiously, as if whatever was inside might change the air in the room. The first thing I saw was a check, and for a second my brain refused to process the number, because numbers like that did not belong in my life, not in my apartment, not in my hands. And I blinked once, then again, trying to make it smaller, more reasonable. But it did not change. It stayed exactly what it was, more than my rent for a year, more than every unpaid bill stacked behind me, more than anything I had ever imagined having access to. Underneath it was a single sheet of paper, clean, simple, with typed words that looked almost too ordinary for what they represented: a job offer, full-time, benefits included, hours that made sense for someone who had a child to take care of, a salary that did not feel like survival, but something close to stability, something I had stopped believing in a long time ago. My grip tightened slightly, and I looked up at him, searching for something, an explanation, a catch, something that would make this make sense, because nothing about this was normal, nothing about this was free. Why me? I asked again, but this time it sounded different, less confused, more careful, because now I understood that answers mattered, that every word between us carried weight I could not ignore. He did not move, did not rush, just watched me the way he had since the beginning, like he was measuring not what I said, but what I would do next. "Because you asked the wrong person," he said, and the simplicity of it hit harder than anything complicated could have, because he was right, because I had stood in front of someone who saw me as replaceable, as small, as someone who could be dismissed without consequence, and somehow, somewhere, he had decided that was unacceptable. I let out a slow breath I did not realize I had been holding, my eyes dropping back to the paper, to the possibility sitting right in front of me, because this was more than help, this was direction. This was a path I had not chosen, but now had to consider. "And what do you get?" I said quietly, because that was the part no one ever skipped. That was the part life had taught me never to ignore. And for the first time since he arrived, there was a pause, not long, not uncertain, just enough to make the moment shift slightly. "Peace of mind," he answered, and I looked up at him again, because that was not the answer I expected, not something tangible, not something I could calculate. And yet the way he said it made it feel real, like this mattered to him in a way I did not understand yet. The room felt smaller again, quieter, the weight of the decision settling in around me. Because I knew what saying yes would mean. I knew it would tie me to something bigger than myself, something I could not fully see. And yet saying no did not feel real either. Not when my daughter was sleeping in the next room. Not when I had spent years fighting just to keep us afloat. My thumb brushed the edge of the paper, grounding myself in the texture, in the reality of it. And I realized something that both steadied and unsettled me at the same time. Because this was not about being saved, not really. This was about being seen, about someone stepping in and deciding I deserved more than what I had been given, and whether that was a gift or a risk, I could not tell yet. "If I accept," I said slowly, choosing each word carefully, "things change." And his gaze did not waver, not even slightly, as he answered, "They already have." And that was the moment it became clear that this was not a question of if my life would be different, but how much I was willing to let it change. And as I stood there holding that envelope, I understood that the hardest part was not what he was offering. It was what I was about to become if I said yes. I did not answer him right away, because saying yes felt too simple for something this complicated, and saying no felt impossible after everything that had already happened. So I stood there in my own kitchen holding a future I did not plan for, while he stood across from me like he had already accounted for every possible outcome. I looked down at the paper again, tracing the printed lines as if they could tell me who I would become on the other side of this decision. And for a moment, all I could hear was the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of my daughter shifting in her sleep, the ordinary noises of a life that suddenly did not feel so ordinary anymore. "This is not just a job," I said slowly, because I needed to say it out loud, needed to confirm that I was not imagining the weight behind it. And his response came without hesitation. "No," he said, and there was no attempt to soften it, no attempt to make it easier. Just the truth laid out in front of me the same way everything else had been. I let out a breath that felt heavier than it should have, my mind moving through every version of what this could mean, every risk, every unknown. every possibility that did not come with clear answers. And yet underneath all of it, there was something else, something steadier, something I had not felt in a long time. The sense that for once, I was not being pushed into a corner, I was being offered a way out of one. I thought about the office, about the way I had stood there asking for help, and received nothing but dismissal, about how small that moment had made me feel. And then I thought about the hospital, about the way everything had changed without me having to beg a second time, about the way he had looked at me like I mattered in a way I had almost forgotten was possible. My fingers tightened slightly around the paper, grounding myself in the decision that was already forming before I fully admitted it. And when I finally looked up at him, there was no hesitation left in my voice. "I will take it," I said, and the words settled between us with a weight that felt both terrifying and right at the same time. He nodded. Once, just once, like this had been expected, like the outcome had already been written long before I spoke it. And there was no celebration in his reaction, no relief, just a quiet acknowledgement that something had shifted into place. "Good," he said, and that one word carried more certainty than anything else, because it was not approval, it was confirmation, like I had stepped exactly where he intended me to. I set the paper down carefully, my hands steadier now, my thoughts clearer in a way. They had not been since this all began, and for the first time, I felt something close to control returning, not over everything, but over myself, over the direction I was choosing to take. "What happens now?" I asked, because decisions like this do not end anything. They begin something, and I needed to understand what came next, what this new path would require from me. He took a step closer, not enough to close the distance completely, just enough to make his presence feel more immediate, more real. And when he spoke, his voice was just as calm as before, but there was something different underneath it now, something that felt more personal, more deliberate. "Now," he said, "you stop surviving." And the words landed deeper than I expected, because survival had been the only thing I had known for so long that I had stopped questioning it, stopped imagining anything beyond it. I swallowed slowly, my gaze holding his, because if I was stepping into something new, I needed to understand the rules, needed to know where I stood. "And what does that mean?" I asked, and this time, there was the faintest shift in his expression, something almost like a promise, something that made the air feel just a little heavier. "It means," he said quietly, "you start living on your terms." And for a second, just 1 second, I believed him completely, but as the silence settled again, I realized something else, something just as important, because men like him do not offer new lives without becoming part of them. And as I stood there in my kitchen with a future I had just agreed to, I understood that whatever came next, it would not just be about changing my life, it would be about stepping into his world, whether I was ready for it or not. The next morning did not feel like a new beginning. It felt like stepping into something already in motion, like I had agreed to a story that had started long before I understood my place in it. And as I stood in front of my small bathroom mirror, adjusting the same clothes I had worn to survive 100 ordinary days, I realized they did not feel the same anymore, not because they had changed, but because I had. My daughter was still asleep, her fever finally gone, her breathing steady in a way that made everything else seem quieter, and I paused at her doorway for a moment longer than necessary, watching her, reminding myself why I said yes, why I stepped into something unknown without asking for guarantees, because everything I did now had to begin and end with her. My phone buzzed softly on the kitchen counter, and when I picked it up, there was only a single message, no name, no introduction, just an address and a time. Precise, controlled, like everything about him. And for a second I hesitated, not because I doubted the decision, but because I understood now that following through meant there was no stepping back into who I used to be. The drive across the city felt longer than usual, every traffic light stretching just enough to make me think, to replay everything that led me here, the hospital, the envelope, his voice, his certainty. And when I finally pulled into the address he had sent, I knew immediately this was not a place I would have ever entered on my own. Not because it was intimidating in an obvious way, but because everything about it was too precise, too controlled, too intentional, like nothing here was accidental. The building rose clean and sharp against the skyline, glass reflecting the morning light in a way that made it impossible to see inside. And as I stepped out of my car, I felt it again, that shift in the air, that quiet awareness that I was being noticed, not watched in a threatening way, but acknowledged, like my presence here had already been accounted for. Inside, the space was quiet, almost too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your footsteps sound louder than they should. And before I could even approach the desk, someone stepped forward, not surprised, not questioning, just ready like. They had been expecting me down to the second. "Ms. Brooks," he said, and hearing my name here, in a place like this, made something settle and tighten at the same time, because it meant this was real, all of it. Every step I had taken since yesterday had led exactly here. I followed without asking questions, because at this point, questions felt like something that would only slow down what was already happening. And the elevator ride was silent, smooth, controlled, rising faster than I expected, like even the building itself moved with purpose. When the doors opened, I saw him before anything else, standing near the far window. The city stretched out behind him like something he owned without needing to claim it. And for a moment, I just stood there, taking in the contrast, the distance between where I had come from and where I was now. The quiet weight of the decision I had already made settling into something more permanent. He turned slightly as I approached, his expression unchanged, calm, certain, like nothing about this moment surprised him. And that steadiness grounded me more than anything else could have. "You came," he said, and it was not a question, not even a test, just a simple acknowledgement, and I nodded once, meeting his gaze without hesitation, because whatever this was, whatever I had stepped into, I was not going to shrink from it. I said I would. I replied, and for the first time since this began, I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not doubt, but something stronger, something that felt like the beginning of a different kind of strength. And as he studied me for a brief moment, I realized this was not just about him changing my life anymore. This was about whether I could stand in this new world without losing who I was. Because stepping into his world was one thing, but staying myself inside it, that was going to be the real test. He did not ask me to sit, and somehow that told me more than if he had, because nothing here was about comfort, it was about intention, about purpose, and I remained standing for a moment, matching his stillness, letting the silence settle without rushing to fill it, because I understood now that in his world, silence was not empty, it was measured. "You will not work for me," he said finally, and the words landed differently than I expected, because everything so far had pointed in that direction. And for a brief second, confusion slipped through before I caught it, before I let it show, and he watched me closely, not for reaction, but for control, like he was measuring how quickly I adapted, how well I held my ground when something shifted. "Then what is this?" I asked, my voice steady, because if I had learned anything from him, it was that uncertainty should not be loud, it should be contained, and something in his expression changed, not softer, not harsher, just sharper, like I had asked the right question. "You will work near me," he said, and there it was, the difference, subtle but absolute, and I felt it immediately, because working for someone means direction, but working near someone means something else entirely, something less defined, something that required trust without clearly asking for it. He stepped slightly to the side, gesturing toward the desk behind him, where a folder rested, already prepared, already waiting, and I moved forward this time without hesitation, because whatever this was, I was already inside it, already part of something that had started before I understood it. The folder opened easily in my hands, revealing details that made everything more real, a position within one of his companies, structured, legitimate, something that could exist on paper without raising questions. But even as I read it, I understood that the paper was only part of the story, the visible part, the acceptable part. "You needed stability," he continued, his voice calm, controlled. "Now you have it." And I nodded slowly, because that part was true, undeniable. But stability given this way was not simple. It came with presence, with awareness, with proximity to something I could not fully define yet. I closed the folder carefully, holding it against me like it might anchor me in this moment. And for the first time since I walked in, I allowed myself to look at him differently, not as the man who fixed a problem, not as the one who changed everything overnight, but as someone who had placed himself directly into the path of my life. "And what do you need?" I asked, Because every balance has two sides. Every decision has a return, and I was done pretending otherwise. And this time, his answer did not come immediately, not because he did not know it, but because he chose how to say it. He stepped closer, not invading, not overwhelming, just enough to shift the space between us. And when he spoke, his voice was lower, more deliberate than before. Clarity, he said, and I felt that word settle in a place I had not expected, because clarity meant attention. It meant presence. It meant being seen without confusion or distraction. In what? I asked quietly, and for the first time, his gaze held mine just a fraction longer. Not intense, not demanding, just certain, like the answer was simpler than I was making it. In you, he said, and everything stilled for a moment, because that was not a business answer, not a practical one. It was something else, something that reached beyond contracts and positions and stability. I let out a slow breath, my grip on the folder tightening slightly as I processed what that meant, because being seen the way he saw things was not easy. It was not safe in the way I understood safety, but it was real in a way I could not ignore. The city stretched behind him, endless and distant, and for the first time, I realized I was no longer standing outside of it looking in. I was somewhere inside it now, somewhere I had not planned to be, somewhere I had chosen anyway. Then you should be sure, I said, my voice steady despite everything shifting beneath it, because if I was stepping into this, I needed to hold on to something that was mine, something that did not change no matter where I stood. And his response came without hesitation, without doubt. I always am, he said. And that was the moment I understood the truth I had been circling since the beginning, because this was never about whether I would survive anymore. It was about what I would become standing this close to him, and whether I was strong enough to stay myself while everything else around me changed.